So, it's easy sometimes to fall into the trap of thinking that there's no clear right or wrong side in our present culture war. Everyone is equal parts right and wrong, or everyone's just wrong, flat out, you might think. And you hear this a lot from people. It's kind of nihilistic way of thinking about it. Nihilism disguised as nuance. Well, I think everyone is equally wrong in all ways. What may lead you to this conclusion is the simple fact that all of the individual people on every side of every issue are flawed, often deeply flawed, prone to hypocrisy, self-contradiction, stupidity. And there's so much of all that stuff to go around, hypocrisy, self-contradiction, stupidity, that you may be tempted to sort of throw up your hands and say, well, forget it. It doesn't matter. There's no difference between the two sides. The fight is over nothing. I don't care anymore. It's easy to make this mistake, but it's still a mistake. And it's helpful to remind yourself sometimes that there is a bad side and a good side here. It's not simplistic to put it that way. Which brings us to Jennifer Gunter. She's a prominent abortion proponent and abortionist. So following the saga here, following the discussion, Gunter on Saturday over Twitter first challenged GOP House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy to a, quote, public factual discussion on abortion. Now, another user, not McCarthy, someone else on Twitter, responded with more respect and civility than this person deserves, in my opinion. And that Twitter user said, as long as the discussion begins with accepting that an implanted embryo is a living human organism. As a doctor, you can confirm this. McCarthy's background is in business. So try Senator Sass or Marco Rubio, who have background in law and can explain that a living human organism is a person. Now, Gunter shot back to this random Twitter user and said, an embryo isn't a human. It's a human embryo. And don't effing tell me what I know as a doctor. Now, stop there for a second. An embryo isn't a human, it's a human embryo. Well, that makes no sense. That of course, is like me saying that middle-aged women like Gunter aren't human. They're human middle-aged women. It makes no sense at all. If you're a middle-aged woman, you are in a phase of human development. If you're a middle-aged man, same. If you're an elderly person, if you're a teenager, it's a stage, a phase of human development. If you're a, quote, fetus, you're also in a stage of human development. And the thing about being in a stage of human development is that you must be first a human in order to be in that stage. There has never been a tree or a cow or an earthworm that is a human embryo or a middle-aged woman, because you need first to be human to be any of those other things. Anyway, Gunter continued on Twitter, this time responding to someone who addressed her by just her last name, God forbid. And she said, it's Dr. Gunter to you. We're discussing a subject of my expertise. Then she says, the unborn are zombies. That doesn't apply here. Use medical terms or at least grown-up words. An embryo is a human embryo. It's not a human. Medical words, medical terms. Zombie, apparently, is a medical term. And children at their youngest ages are zombies. This comment, if it reminds you of anything, it's a bit reminiscent of another abortionist, Leah Torres, who a little while ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, responded to someone asking her if the sound of her victims keeps her up at night. And she responded to that by saying, you know the fetus can't scream, right? I transect the cord first, so there's really no opportunity, if they're even far enough along to have a larynx. Now, this is what you get from one side. And these are not extreme or outlier cases. I'm not pulling the most extreme pro-abortion rhetoric and say, well, this is representative of the entire side. No, what's being expressed here is the necessary result of the dehumanizing of children in their earliest stages of development. If it sounds nasty and cruel and awful, it's because dehumanization is a nasty, cruel, awful business. In our culture, it's cloaked in euphemism and described in sanitary clinical terms. But the reality is that a group of people are being excluded from the human category. And throughout human history, there have always been people doing this. People trying to exclude other people from the people club. There have always been people throughout history who point over there and say, those people aren't people. We still have not graduated beyond that. This mentality is just migrated to different areas and different sorts of people. But still, it exists. And the attempt to do this, to dehumanize, to deperson entire groups of persons, is always evil. And the results are always horrifying and always bloody. And the people doing it are always on the wrong side. This all becomes more obvious when people like, quote unquote, Dr. Gunter here make the mistake of being more momentarily honest. Unborn babies aren't zombies, obviously, but she's honest in that she's revealing what she has to tell herself in order to justify what she believes and what she has done. This is what she has to whisper to herself at night in order to sleep. And I think it's helpfully clarifying for the rest of us to hear people like Gunter say this out loud. And that's why I return to this issue, abortion, as often as I do. First of all, because it's the greatest moral crisis of our time. Millions of innocent people are being slaughtered. I think it's a pretty good reason to discuss the issue frequently, I would think. Also, though, because of that clarification that it offers. That this cuts through the fog, it parts the clouds, and it makes it clear where you stand. If you stand on the side where unborn babies are zombies who can be put down and discarded, you're the bad guy. You are the bad guy in this whole drama. There is no moral equivalence. Whatever criticisms you can make of the people on the other side of that divide, and there are plenty of valid criticisms, the fact remains that they want babies to live, and you want them treated as subhuman trash. It's funny to me when pro-abortion people use pro-birth as a pejorative. You hear this all the time. And that's another clarifying thing. They accuse pro-lifers of being merely pro-birth. I always hear this. Oh, you're just pro-birth. Well, am I supposed to recoil at that label? Because I don't. Pro-birth? Well, sure, yeah, I'm pro-birth. I will happily admit that. I am pro-birth. I am in favor of babies being born. Once the baby is conceived, yes, I want him to be born. That's every baby that is right now in the womb of a mother. I want all those babies to be born. I am pro-birth. You, if you're on the other side, you are pro-dismemberment. I feel comfortable with where I am. And though I can't defend everything that everyone on my side says or believes, and I could personally do without some of the kooky conspiracy stuff that folks on the right seem attracted to more than I wish they were, the fact is that we are fighting to protect the most vulnerable. And the other side wants to kill the most vulnerable. This is literally life versus death, right versus wrong, good versus bad. There is no gray area, at least where it matters most. Listen, hit that subscribe button right now. Do it right now. I thank you for your compliance. It is somewhat appreciated.